Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the governing board meeting of the Lammersville Unified School District to order on Wednesday, July 16th at 7 p.m. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded, so I ask that you kindly turn off or silence your cell phones. Members of the public are welcome to speak to the board on agendized items or during public comments for items that are not on the agenda. If anyone present here tonight would like to speak to the board, please fill out a blue comment card in the rear. And tonight I would like to welcome our student board member, Donovan Rudish, for the upcoming year. This is his first official meeting. And as his first meeting here, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Lisa Boulay.
Here.
Vanita Daniel.
Absent.
Sammy Kamodi. Here. Stephanie Olson.
Here.
David Pombo.
Here.
Donovan Rudish.
Here.
Thank you. Item 4, approval and/or corrections to the agenda.
There are none.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Based on a motion by trustee Olson and a second by trustee Modi, student preferential vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with 4 ayes, no noes, and 1 absent. Item 5, committee reports. The committee work for the past academic year has concluded, so there are no reports tonight. However, this is the time of year that we talk about considering changes to committee assignments. And so I did reach out to all the board members and got feedback. And for the upcoming year, there will just be a few changes. So for the district advisory committee, that committee will remain trustee Modi and myself. Trustee Modi, though, can you do the reporting this year for the district advisory committee?
Sure.
Thank you. For the district English language advisory committee, that will now be trustee Olson and myself. And trustee Olson, can you report for that committee?
Yes.
Thank you. Item C is the Education Committee. That will remain with trustee Pombo and trustee Daniel. And trustee Pombo, can you continue to report, please, for that?
Certainly.
Item D is the Facilities Committee. That will remain with trustee Olson and trustee Pombo. And trustee Olson, will you continue to report on that one as well?
Yes.
Item E is the Policy Committee. That will be trustee Daniel and trustee Modi. And I will reach out to trustee Daniel since she's not here today to see if she will continue to report on that one. Item F is the Safety Committee. That will remain with trustee Pombo and trustee Olson. Trustee Pombo, can you continue to report on that? Thank you. And item G is the Wellness Committee, and that will be myself and trustee Daniel, and I'll report on that one. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
No.
Okay, thank you. I think I accommodated everybody's requests, so have fun this year. Item 6, Governing Board Reports. I will start with our student board member.
Awesome. Yeah. So it's been a little bit, but our athletes are back to practicing. Actually, they've been starting since early June, but almost all of our summer sports are back to practice. So basketball, football, baseball, boys and girls soccer, they've all been hard at work preparing for the year. And just yesterday, actually, we had a few other sports join practicing too, so including water polo, tennis, and cross country. So for all our athletes, wishing you guys the best of luck for the year, and you're hard at work. Some other things to add on, leadership is also going back to school early to prepare for the year. Starting on July 23rd, we're gonna have a prep day for our upcoming back to school rally on August 6th. So all of our officers, our ASB, all of our leadership in general will be there. I'm just working on preparing for the rally, homecoming in general too. Some fun stuff coming up. Link Crew also will be working starting July 28th to the 30th with freshman orientation on the 30th. They're just going to be working, prepping, and also just practicing for the orientation. And then finally, the SAT for next month, August, will be on the 23rd. So for all the students out there taking it, good luck. And that's my report.
Thank you. Trustee Olson.
Thank you, President Boulay. On July 1st, I attended the first annual Mountain House State of the City that was held at Mountain House High School. And I was very appreciative to see the efforts of district staff to support that event. That was very kind for them to be there. The Principal Auerbach, some of his assistant principals, the custodians. There was a large group of staff there to support the event, and there was a large crowd, and so I appreciate them working that hard to accommodate that. And on July 4th, I attended the 4th of July parade with my fellow trustees, minus Trustee Modi, who was out of town, and we really missed you. But it was great to be in the parade and celebrate the birthday of our country together with our fellow board members. And I just want to conclude my board report by saying, welcome, Donovan, a student trustee, Rudish, I guess I should say. We're very happy to have you with us. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Trustee Modi.
Thank you. First, I would also welcome Student Trustee Rudish to the board. I wish you a very excellent tenure of success, of learning and growth as well. As Trustee Olson mentioned, I was out of town for a couple weeks, so I did miss a couple of the events. But I do, I wanted to just reflect on, I spent 2 weeks in Chicago. A lot of people know I'm from Chicago. Got to go home and spend time with family, which was, I hadn't done that, I think, in maybe COVID. I think we went back during COVID for a longer time. But other than that, we haven't really gone back for more than a week or so. And so I hope, not only it was beneficial for myself and my family, but I do hope that during this break, a lot of our students, their families are also spending time with families, that are further away, and hopefully some of our staff could do that as well. I think it's crazy that there's only a couple more weeks before school starts again. I feel like we just got out of school. So I speak probably on behalf of both as a pseudo staff member, I'll call myself, as well as parent, that this break went very, very fast. And then the last thing I'll mention is, I did attend the Fire Station number 2 groundbreaking on June 25th with Trustee Pombo and President Boulay. So that was exciting to see the growth of the city, especially also very close to where Pombo Elementary will be. But that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Pombo.
Yes, thank you. On June 25th, I also attended the ribbon cutting at Mountain House Firehouse number 2. Very exciting to see the city growing the way it is. On July 1st, I attended the first annual State of the City address, and that was quite something as well. And on July 4th, along with most of the rest of the board, I participated in the 4th of July parade. And before I hand it back, I would like to welcome student trustee Donovan Rudish to the board. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. So for my report on June 25th, I also attended the Fire Station number 2 ribbon cutting. And so I want to thank the town council and their staff, Mountain House Town Council and their staff for the invitation. They did a very good job, and it's exciting to see that part of Mountain House developing. And I know that we have broken ground for our school over there, so things are going to move along quickly. On July 1st, I also attended the State of the City, and I do, again, want to echo what Trustee Olson said to our LUSD staff and Mountain House High School staff. There were a lot of people there to help support that evening, but I know there was a lot of work that happened even before that in terms of coordination, logistics, practicing for those drones, because the drone show was amazing. So thank you to all of our staff who put in extra work to make that happen. And for the drone show, they did have an amazing Mountain House High School Mustang logo, so that was really exciting.
I took a picture of it if anybody wants to see.
And then on July 4th, I also attended the traditional 4th of July parade, and that was also a great event. And that is the end of my report. Item 7, receiving of public comments. I don't have any blue comment cards. Is there any member of the audience who wishes to make a comment to the board? Seeing none, I will move to Item 8, consent items for consideration. Action items proposed for consent are consistent with the approved practices of the district and are deemed routine in nature. Trustees receive board agenda background information in advance of scheduled meetings and are prepared to vote with knowledge on the consent items. Item A, governing board meeting minutes from the regular meeting on June 18th and the special meeting on June 16th. Item B, contracts under $50,000. Item C, ratification of certificated and classified personnel actions. And item D, ratification of 2025, 2026 inter and intra-district transfer requests. Would anybody like to pull any of these items for special consideration or discussion?
Move to approve consent items.
Based on a motion by trustee Pombo and a second by trustee Modi, student preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with 4 ayes, no noes, and 1 absent. Madam Clerk, would you please do the honors?
Yes. We would like to welcome the following hires for the 25-26 school year to the Lammersville family. Alyssa Bagnato, CTE Culinary Arts. Winnie Chang, self-contained classroom teacher. Jennifer Haig, CTE Biomedical teacher. Danny Hernandez, 7th grade teacher. Tori Johnson, self-contained classroom teacher. Ashley Lamb, kindergarten teacher. Rosalie Manalo Corona, kindergarten teacher. Nuet Aman, a CTE video production and photography teacher. Felicia Medeiros, school psychologist. Gabriel Novello, K-8 physical education teacher. Megan Patterson, kindergarten teacher. Megan Roberts, self-contained classroom teacher. And Rachel Varghese, self-contained classroom teacher. Welcome to the Lammersville family.
Thank you. Item 9, district administrative reports. Item A, superintendent's report.
Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah. So anyways, real quick, all staff are starting to roll back in. Our site administrators are back working. Next week starts their official hardcore meetings with the district, and we start to plan for the year. I'm also in my multi-weekly trip over to Sourdough & Co. I see some of our teachers are back. Said hi to a few of them today as well. So everything's moving forward in preparation for the school year. We're going to have Director Manley come up and give a special education update. I've asked him to prepare for this presentation a while ago, waiting for it to kind of fit right. Well, nearly every action item is a special ed item, so we thought tonight, let's make it special education night. As he prepares to do his presentation, I just want to remind the board and the community that special education is a constantly moving target. We are building the plane while flying it. The state is always moving the goalposts, and every district does its best to provide the best services for students with special needs. And it is a challenge that grows ever more flummoxing and challenging when you add the combination of funding challenges and the dynamics between the desires and the capabilities of all the factors that we must consider. And with that, I'll turn it over to Director Manley, who will give you a great detail how we're addressing special education.
Thank you, Dr. Nilis. Board President Boulay, trustees, thank you for having me here tonight. I'm very excited to share some updates, as Dr. Nicholas talked about funding, our programs, and just kind of where we're at as a special education department in Lammersville. First, I want to just be very clear and talk about what makes a special education student, or what is a special education student. And so just because a student has a disability doesn't necessarily qualify them for special education. There's 13 qualifying disabilities, but a student has to have a disability that then negatively impacts their educational performance and then requires special education services to help bridge the gap of that impact. And so it's not just the disability, but it's a disability plus an impact on their education. And so that's really the students we're talking about tonight. There's those students who have some struggles and some gaps and have a disability that's contributing to that we're providing support for. And so typically those students in our district are students that are receiving speech and language support. They're receiving specialized academic instruction, and that can look like students that are receiving resource support either in the classroom or they get pulled out of the classroom. It could be students in our special day class. We have a mild moderate special day class. as well as an extensive support needs classroom. Our extensive support needs classroom are students who have limited or nonverbal skills and just require a little bit more support than students in our mild moderate classroom. And then we have our life skills classroom at the high school, and those students are working on job skills, daily living skills, just to prepare them for life after high school. And so that's typically the type of main services our students receive. They also receive kind of related services in terms of occupational therapy, physical therapy, deaf and hard hearing services. So there's a conglomerate of services they receive, but primarily this is the students, the primary services they receive in our district. And when we talk about special education, what I really want to highlight is just kind of where we're at as a state. So this is a graph of the last 10 years of state enrollment overall. So the red bar graph is overall state enrollment in public education. And you can see over the last 10 years, that enrollment has been declining. But what you'll notice is the blue bar graph has been increasing, which is representation of students with disabilities. So the amount of students with disabilities has been climbing, while overall enrollment has been declining. So there's the percent of enrollment of students with disabilities, you can see that yellow line graph, has been steadily climbing over the last 10 years. Our district, however, we've been pretty consistent in terms of our numbers of students with disabilities. You can see the red is our overall enrollment over the last 4 years, and then the blue is our students with disabilities number. So last year we had 600 students with disabilities, or students receiving special education services, which has been pretty consistent over the last 4 years of about 7.5%. This is a really interesting graph from School Services of California. What you'll see, and Trustee Modi just referred to that very fun time in 2020 called COVID. You'll see in the far right, the students with disabilities 0 to 5. During that year of 2020, you'll see a negative 14.63%. What that means is there was a huge decline in the amount of students who were identified as needing special education services. And why is that? Well, they weren't in school, they weren't in preschools, they weren't in play groups or anything else that help parents or other people identify or recommend maybe seeing a pediatrician or something else. But what you'll see is to the two bar graphs to the right of that, we're catching up. And so over the last few years, we've seen a huge growth in students with disabilities that have been identified. And that's because we are catching up from the COVID years. Those students are now entering school in their early years of school, and they're starting to be identified, and we're starting to see them more and more and get them services now. And you'll see that across the board. So the far left is students with disabilities 0 to 22. Then we have 6 to 22 in the 0 to 5 range. And you'll see they all took a hit during COVID, and then they're steadily have rebound. That'll flatten out at some point, but we're still seeing a pretty gradual increase in the amount of students with disabilities. And you can see that here. And so what I really want to pay attention to on this is if you look at, we already looked at the CalPADS enrollment for the state and the student with disability count, but if you look at the significant disability count or percent, you'll see that that number's been gradually growing as well, where the state's got about 31 students who are identified as having a significant disability. And that's 20,000 growth over the last few years. About 20,000 students on average are growing in that category. To the far right, you'll see autism, students with an autism disability, and you'll see that's also been growing over the years too. So both significant disability and students with autism have been growing, and we see that in our district as well. So you'll see on the bottom on this table is the state numbers from 23-24. They don't have the 24-25 numbers for the state, but in comparison to our 24-25 numbers, you'll see that we're about half. So the state average is about, or the state has 14.58% students with disability enrollment. We as a district are at 7.45, so we're about half, which is good because that's a lot of just attributed work to the work our teachers are doing, the work Dr. Nicholas has done in terms of, and the board, in terms of highlighting and focusing on that 20% and getting them the support and interventions early as opposed to waiting and then qualifying for special education services. However, what you'll see in our population is over half of our students have significant disability, which is quite substantially higher than the state average of 31%. And then we also have a higher prevalence of students with autism, about 5% higher than the state. So we have a lower overall percent of students with disabilities, but our students with disabilities have higher needs than typical state. The other thing that we experience in Mountain House is we have tremendous growth, as we all know, right? There's no shortage of students. And with that, we have a lot of students that are moving into the district that have IEPs already. So these are not students that we qualified for special education services. These are students who moved into the district with an IEP. So if you add those numbers up, over the last 3 years, about a quarter of our students in special education have moved into the district with an IEP. And that's pretty substantial because we have taken a lot of pride and a lot of time in developing really good systems and supports in our special education department. And so when we have a student move in, we get them aligned and moving in that support to help close that gap. And when we're having, like last year, we had 74 students move in. That's a pretty substantial number to get in, get them acclimated, and get them moving through our system so we can get them back in the general education environment as much as possible. Now let's talk about funding, because all of that is impacted by funding. And you'll see over the last 10 years, the blue and yellow, the blue is the federal revenues percent contributing to special education funding, the yellow is the state, and the green is us, local control, right? And to no one's surprise, the state and Fed have decreased over the last 10 years the amount of funding they provided, and the district has had to kick in, or the local control has had to create the stopgap for that. So over the last 5 years, the state and Fed have slowly started to increase their contribution again, but because of the total cost of special education and just how they have incrementally increased, it really doesn't have much of an impact in terms of what they're contributing to us because of the total cost of special education in general. So it's a lot of district, which you'll see next. Or in just a second. So what I want to talk before we get to the next slide, which is our projected funding for 25-26, is our SELPA funding. So we receive funding from the state, but it goes through the SELPA. And previously, before Dr. Nicholas worked extremely hard to write this, our SELPA had an ADA model. And that model was the SELPA took a percent of your ADA right off the top. And so you had districts that were overutilizers and underutilizers. So if you were underutilizing, you contributed to those who were overutilizing. And we were an underutilizer by about 3.5%. So we were contributing to others. And Dr. Nicholas saw that and said, this isn't right, and worked extremely hard with the SELPA to change the funding. And starting last year, we have what our current model is, which is a utilization model. So we are funded based on the percent of the program we utilize. There's no more overutilizers, underutilizers. You pay for what you use. And so that brought back over $1.5 million back into the district that we can use for our own programs and supports. And so with this utilization model, they take 3 timestamps throughout the year, and they average that out, and that's what your utilization is, your percent. So what's that look like projection for this year? So right off the top, the AB 602 goes to the SELPA based off our ADA, and that's the $7.25 million you see there. That's funded off our ADA. Based off our projected utilization of county programs, we'll receive back about $2.5 or $2.4 million, which then means our general fund has to kick in about $7.7 million to cover the rest of the support, services, and staffing for special education. And we do receive that great federal funding of about $900,000. And this is all projections. So again, utilization, if we don't use all of our projection, we'll have more back at the end of the year. If we use more, we'll have less. So in the last 2 years, we've done a lot of revamping in our special education department. With that was first the funding, right? Because now with the more funding in the district, we're able to change some of our programs. We expanded our programs. Previously, our county had a wait list for students that needed the support of a little bit higher level program. Dr. Nicholas said, no, we're not having students wait for that. Let's open our own program because now we have the funding. So we opened an extensive support needs classroom, and we continue to expand our programs and supports, including our staff. We've added more behaviorists, more psychologists to help make sure we're supporting students, because we are seeing more students with behavioral needs and social emotional needs that are on IEPs. And with that, We revamped our systems to make sure that those referrals are getting to us at the right time, that we're not waiting, like we talked about in terms of providing support and intervention to students. Our behaviorists have a referral system that they can go right in and support a general education student in a general education classroom in terms of working with the teacher and providing support and training for them. We've also really looked at our curriculum, which we'll talk more about in just a little bit, but identifying any gaps we had in that. So we changed our TK2 curriculum for math, and we've also revamped some of our curriculum in the 3rd through 8th grades to make sure to align to moving kids back into the general education classroom. So that when they go back into that classroom and they're included in that classroom, it's not a learning curve to learn the new curriculum, but they're used to and exposed to what the students in the general education environment are receiving with support. And then we've taken a lot more data. In our SDC class, our teachers are doing a great job of tracking data and making sure that students have the learning skills or the readiness skills to move into that general education classroom, and we have the data to support that, because it's scary for everybody. It's scary for the general education teacher, it's scary for the parents when we're saying, hey, they're ready, we're gonna transition them, and everyone's like, wait, are you sure they're ready? And we're like, yes, now we have the data to show, yes, they're very ready. And most importantly too, we've really worked on a lot of legal compliance in the last 2 years with our legal representation. We've had our legal representation work with us on making sure our IEPs are legally compliant, worked with our psychologists and SLPs to create assessment checklists to make sure our assessments have everything they need to be legally compliant and sound. Because one, we want to make sure we're doing everything correct. But two, in our district, we do have a high prevalence of advocacy in our district. And advocates are great. They can be a great collaboration for the parents, a great support for the parents. They can be a great bridge in some of those discussions. However, there are some that take advantage of parents and just kind of the environment of special education. And they're there to line their pockets, I will say, not for the right reasons. And so in order to combat some of that, we've really stepped up our game in terms of making sure that they can't try to focus on that and make it contentious, because we keep to very strict compliance standards in terms of what we expect of our staff when we present it to parents. Also, since July 1st, 2022, because of the growth, we've added an additional 7 SDC classrooms. We now have a total of 14 SDC classrooms, which is a huge amount of growth. Each of those classrooms have between about 10 to 12 students, so that's about 70 to 84 students that we've added in our SDC classes. We have 11 mild moderate classes, 2 extensive support needs classes, and 1 life skills class. And those are spread out. We have the full continuum at Cuesta, Wicklin, and then Altamont has an ESN class in the high school. And with that, we've had a lot of new teachers, a lot of new staff in general. We've had 30 new teachers. And if we look at that, that seems like a large number, but it's really a good number to have, because we've had 7 new SDC teachers, so that takes 7 away from that number. We've also opened new schools. So with opening new schools, we add new teachers. We've also grown as a district, so we have some schools that went from 1 resource teacher to 2 resource teachers. And in a teaching shortage, we're able to find staff. We have people applying to work in our staff because of our district and what we provide and support, and just the type of environment that we provide. We had 1 psychologist opening this year, and we had 50 applicants for that position. So there's a shortage in teaching, but we don't have any shortage of applicants. However, not all applicants know what they are getting into when they sign up for special education, or the expectations we have as a district, because we do have high expectations, especially for our students that have some of those bigger gaps that we need to fill. And so some of that is staff that just, special education wasn't for them, or it wasn't for them here, right? Because of our expectations and what we expect. And but we've also, with that too, we've promoted teachers as well. We have a teacher that's now a coordinator, and so a lot of that is great growth, and some of that is just because we expect high expectations for our students, and we expect our teachers to do the best for our students. So let's talk about how all this goes to results. And the state has multiple measures they look at. It's almost like special education has its own dashboard. They look at everything from least restrictive environment to parent involvement, and they do look at test scores as well, which we'll talk about in just a second. Some of the things I want to highlight, is we are ranked a 9 out of 10 for math and special education in the state. So we're in the top 90th percentile for special education students in math scores, and a 7 out of 10 for ELA, so top 70th percentile. We have a continuous improvement and monitoring plan that we have to develop because of significant disproportionality, meaning a certain group of students is identified higher in a certain area. And that's, again, a large part is students moving into the district, because that counts towards that. With that, we have to target specific students that are not special education but are on the trajectory to be going that direction. And so we have 30 students we identified in this 24-25 plan. Out of those 30 students, 6 are now at grade level, and these are students that were substantially below grade level. The other 24 have made progress. They're just not there yet, but they're making great progress based off the plan and the work the teachers and team is doing. What I'm most excited about, and this is a great number, is this year we exited 57 special education students, meaning they tested out of special education. They no longer qualify for that need, meaning we closed the gap for those students. And a lot of times you'll see this, as you see, there's 34 speech students, which is great, meaning they no longer require speech services. Either they fix their articulation error, or maybe they don't have the language disability that is still there, but it's not impacting them as much. But what's really exciting is 23 of those students were students who were receiving specialized academic instruction. As we went back to the front, remember, to qualify for special education, you have to have a disability that significantly impacts your performance. Usually that's 2 years, generally 2 years below grade level. So that means that we had 23 of our special education students who closed that gap this year and are now no longer considered special education students. They're now general education students, and they've closed the gap, which is exciting. That's what we really celebrate. And then we've also had several students that we've moved from our SDC program back into the general education program with resource support. So we're moving students all the time in the right direction. One of the other things the state looks at is parent involvement. The state has a target. You have to have 97% of your parents have to identify on the IEP that they felt involved or included in the IEP process. They have to check a box, sign their name to it. State target's 97%. We had 100% this last year. One of the other things the state looks at is least restrictive environment or inclusion. They have targets for each of these areas. So 5A you'll see is the state wants to see how many students spend 80% or more of their day in the general education classroom. The state had a target of 67%. We have 75% of our students with disabilities spending their day in general education. So we beat the state target. 5B is students who are in the general education classroom less than 40% of the day. So you want to be lower than the state target. The state target's 13.5%. We're at 11.6%. The state target changes each year, and we've already beat it for this year too. And then the third one is students who are in private settings, whether that be residential facilities, non-public schools, and the state target, again, for that, you'll see is 2.6. You want to be lower than that. We're about 1.3, about half of it. So again, we met that state target. So these are some of the great numbers we look at. Now we're going to get into CASP. And CASP is one of those funny things we look at for students with disabilities, because what CASP is measuring is students who meet or exceed their grade level standards. But as we know of students with disabilities, that they qualify for special education because they have a disability that's significantly impacting the performance, typically 2 years below grade level, right? So shouldn't see a huge number of students meeting standard, but we do have a great number in our district. So you'll see we're pretty consistent. 23, 24, and 24, 25. The red is our ELA score. So we jumped 1% from last year to this year in ELA, and that's where we have the rank of 7 out of 10 in the state. For science, we stayed the same. About 14% of our students met or exceed standards. And then for math, 21%, 23, 24. And then in 24, 25, 20%, that's where we're ranked 9 out of 10 in the state. So what the state does set targets for is certain grade levels for CASP. They set targets for 4th grade, 8th grade, and 11th grade. And so what we'll see here is 4th grade. The state target for 4th grade for both 23, 24, and 24, 25 was 16%. And you can see that in both years for both ELA and math, we exceeded the state target for our 4th grade students. Pretty substantially too, especially in math. Then we go to 8th grade. And what you'll see is that state target changes. And why does that state target change? Is because the state knows that a longer a student's been in special education, usually the larger the gap, right? The sooner we can get and support them, the smaller the gap, and usually the sooner we can close it. But as they stay in special education longer and longer, a lot of times it's because there's a larger gap we're working to close. So they lower that state target. You can see we still have beat that state target. And again, these are students who are still identified as students with disability or receiving special education services. These are special education students. The 54 students we exited that are now at grade level, they don't count for these scores. They now go into the general education scores. So these are students that are 2 years or more behind still receiving services that they haven't tested out as special education or they're still eligible for services. Then we go to 11th grade. You can see 23, 24, we did not meet the state targets for ELA or math, and they're still at that 9 for the state target. However, in 24, 25, we did meet it for ELA. We had some good growth there. And we didn't meet it for math, but we had some really good growth there. And so I want to talk about 11th grade and the special education at the high school. 2 years ago, Dr. Nicholas had us do an audit of the special education program at the high school. And what we found is there were some things we needed to work on. We needed to work on some just logistical planning in terms of how students were taking the courses, how long they were in a course, and what they were receiving in that course in terms of curriculum. And so this last year was the first implementation of a lot of the changes we made in terms of how they're scheduled in their day, the type of support they're receiving, and the curriculum they're using. And we're continuing to work on that. And so while we didn't meet the target in math, we're seeing that growth, and I think we'll see that continue because of the changes we've made based off the audit we did. We had a program that wasn't meeting the needs of our students, and now we've made those changes, and we're well on the way to continue that growth. And these are also the hardest kids to move. So our 11th grade students have been in special education a lot of times the longest, and so that gap is generally fairly large, and so it's very difficult to move the students, not impossible, difficult with the right supports, and that's what we continue to focus on and work on. So just some highlights again. Our ELA and math program for special education is highly ranked in the state. Our parent involvement we have high levels of parent involvement. Our inclusion and support of students is highly inclusive environment. Overall, we're exceeding the state targets in least restrictive environment, preschool, CAF scores, pretty much in all areas. And then that's all great, but our job as special educators is to work ourselves out of a job. That all the kids are back in general education, there's no need for us anymore. And so we have a continuous focus on making sure that we improve, that we're growing supports for our students, we're evaluating our programs and making sure that we continue to move them in the right direction. Might take a couple years, but we want to move them and keep moving them. So with that, thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. That was amazing. Very, very good overview. I do have a couple questions. In terms of the 25% of kids who move into our district that already have an IEP, do we have to redo that IEP, or do we evaluate it at some point to make sure that our assessment is the same as the previous school's assessment?
So sometimes we do assess. If we see something just really off, we will assess at times. Typically what we do is we look at the IEP, we see how we can meet that as a district, what services and supports we're going to provide, and generally we'll hold like a 30-day review. And in that first 30 days, the student we see is what they have adequate? Do we want to make some changes to the IEP? And then we make those changes.
Okay, thank you. And then my final, just one more question regarding the federal funding. I know it's not a lot, $895,000, so less than $1 million, but every little bit helps. With what the government has done recently to pause federal funding to education, is that going to have a huge impact on us, or do we have a timeline for when those funds might become available? Or is that? I don't think. Or am I asking you to look into a crystal ball?
Yeah, that's going to go through litigation, and it's either, there's 3 different scenarios. The worst one is the general fund will cover the gap more.
Thank you. And that's all I have. Thank you again. That was great.
Yeah, I just wanted to want to give a shout out to the whole special ed staff, because I'm assuming that you work, well, I guess this is my question. How closely do you work with the gen ed teachers to get this kind of inclusion, and how on board are they with this supporting our students?
Yeah, we work very closely with the sites and the general education teachers. We provide trainings, we provide supports, we have our coordinators that go in and work with the teachers when we have students transitioning over. So there's a lot of collaboration and support within the district.
Yeah, I think that's really great because I know that like when I was a special ed teacher, I was always trying to help kids like move away and teach myself out of a job, like you said. And I just wanted to also give a shout out to the district and the decision makers and everybody that did the work to bring in the ESN classes, because I know I put myself in the shoes of a parent with a child who needs extensive support needs, and a lot of the county programs being far away. I think it's very thoughtful, and I think they're going to get a bigger investment in them here. So I just want to say that's very, very great work that I think you're doing for the students. And as far as funding goes, I mean, it's just abysmal that the federal government is what mandates special ed and requires every service that you provide, and they give us the least amount of money. And I think that, I don't know that will ever change, but I sure wish it would, because that's a lot of money that they leave up to districts to cover with their general funds. And that's all I have.
I have a question, and it is for Dr. Nicholas, but it is related to special ed. As you mentioned, the majority of our agenda this evening is special ed related expenditures. And as was noted in the presentation, the lion's share of those come from the general fund. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And I point this out not to argue with any of the special ed expenditures. We need to do whatever our special ed kids need to help them along. It's only to point out that the state and federal government fall far short of their obligation to fund these things. And it not only affects special ed students, it affects all of our students, because we have to take money away from other students to supplement the special ed. And I think it said 7% or something came from the federal government. When they gave us the special ed mandate, they promised 40% funding, and they've never come anywhere near that. And I just wanted to point that out for the record.
Thank you for those questions, sir.
I'll make up.
Question in there.
I'll make up for Trustee Pombo's lack of questions, I'm sure. So this is the first time I've seen this presentation or a presentation like this. So one, I appreciate all the work that you've done, I think, in the district, as well as in explaining this, very stepwise and taking us through it. I do have some questions, if you'll forgive me. First are the terms that were in the kind of the special needs, extensive special needs, are those statute created terms? Or are those terms that are used in general, or
Those are standard terms, yeah. So mild, moderate, or in extensive support needs, those are terms that are used in the state.
Okay.
Specialized academic instruction, all that is common across the state.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. And my concern was just if it creates stigma for students that end up being labeled as, those different categories. I'm gonna present a scenario just based on the data, and I want you to just walk me through why I'm hoping my scenario is false. Okay, so I think the state percentage of students with disabilities, I think is at 14% or something, right? And ours is 7%, right? How do we? Here's a scenario. We actually have 14% of students that need disability. We just don't approve that for half of the students. I'm not asserting that, and I have no reason to say that. I'm just trying to figure out what do you think accounts for, I guess, the difference in the percentages from state level versus our community. And I'm assuming it's not, we're not providing needs to some kids that are on the bubble.
Right. To answer your question, I think it's going to be demographics and the success of a district. Our district's highly successful. So if you look at our overall general education scores that are in the 75 percentile, right, most districts are not anywhere close to that. And so when you look at the state, you're looking at districts all across the state that are nowhere near that. And so we have a lot of students that are highly successful and not as many students that need the support, and that's in large part too because of the programs and supports we offer as a district. We have intervention teachers coming next year, so we highly focus on students that are right there on that cusp that could go special education or could end up excelling with the right support. And our district has done a great job of focusing on providing that support and providing it early so they don't end up having to fall so far behind that they qualify for special education.
Could I piggyback off that question?
Yeah.
Like, because I also think it's our community, and so if you want to confirm this for me, is parents are just very involved at an early age, and with special education, the sooner a parent is involved, the less likely their kid will need additional supports, and they can just go straight to a general ed class. And I think that's true of this community, that parents are very active with their kids. They take them to the doctors. They get them assessed regularly. So they get the early intervention supports that come with preschool.
Right.
Was that accurate?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
I also feel like our district does a good job of helping our students move back into the gen ed population, where I fear other school districts just kind of move the kids along. Just don't worry about what their classification are, what their abilities are, just move them to the next step.
I appreciate that input, largely because it answers my next question.
Can I value add though real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
12 years ago, we were identified as over-identifying special ed kids, and I believe the number was somewhere around 11%. And so we started to really look at what we were doing. We were much smaller. We were only four schools at that time, and one of them was a small school. And so why is it that we're over-identifying? And we realized that we had some structural problems. The SST process was flawed significantly. And so over time, we rebuilt that. And I think that we had to build a culture, which is that if a kid falls into special education, then we had to have done all of the steps possible to determine that we couldn't fix it in the regular classroom. And I think over time, what we were able to do is build a culture that if I'm struggling to get a kid to learn, that doesn't necessarily need to go to a referral to a special ed testing. I think so. We did a cultural norm shift, and we built layers of structure that I think is bearing fruit now. And as we've grown, then we've just added that culture to all the schools we've built. And I think it's momentum has picked up on itself, which is lowered 11 to 7.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think one of the data points that I took away that I think really shows the success is the percentage of students that are, I'm going to get the term wrong, severely have severe needs.
Significant.
Is that the right term?
Significant disability.
Significant.
Yeah.
Okay, significant needs is higher in our district than at the state level. But at the same time, our percent of students who go back into general education or are receiving general education is higher than the state as well. So we have, as a percentage, a higher level of students who need more services, but yet we are able to return them to the general education pathway better than the state, elsewhere. So I thought that was really insightful for me. So I appreciate that, the extra insight. The funding one where it said $7 million, and this is I'm just trying to understand it. We contribute $7 million to SELPA. We get about 2 something back. Does that mean we're down 5, or is that not a good way to interpret it?
So that $5 million is used for county programs. So we have students that are in county programs. And based off of how many students we project for this year, that's where that number comes in along with some of the cost of operating the county programs, because the county programs are all paid for by the SELPA, which is all the districts contribute.
Okay, got it. So there's no loss there. It matches the previous slide, which said that it's based on per student, and it just kind of depends on whether they go to
it's
county
based off
programs.
utilization model. Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to piggyback on something that Trustee Modi just said about the percentages, and I just kind of did the math more or less in my head, and our percentages of the mild, moderate, and the higher, the more disabled students, if you do it per total rather than per our special ed kids, is about where the state is. We just have less of the lower level of special ed kids. Is that, and I know that's hard to follow, but
I lost you.
can you go back
Yeah.
to that? to that.
Are you asking like how the state like identifies what is a student with a disability in their data? Like,
This one?
Not.
is that what you're
no,
asking?
Back farther, I think. A little bit more, I think.
Almost at the beginning. That's
That's
it.
the beginning, yeah. So this is the slide here where we talked about the significant disability count.
Yes,
Yeah.
this is the right slide. We are 50% of significant disability, but that's of 7.5 or 7.45%. If it's of the total, it would be about 25%.
So
In other words, if we were at 14%, it would be that number instead of 50% would be 25%. And
Yes.
the other number would be 12% instead of 24%. So in that respect, we are lower than the state percentages.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, if you make the assumption that the remaining 7% is on the bubble and would not be in the severe.
Right.
100%, yeah. I think that's accurate.
And I know I twisted that up in my initial question, but I think we all understand what I meant now.
Oh, crystal clear.
So two last things. One is, just it would be helpful, whether it's follow-up or not, maybe the next one it'd be helpful to just see even the quantity of students by grade, right? So if we are seeing them not age out of, but progress and not need special education as they progress through the district, that'd be helpful to be able to see that trend line. And then the last question I have for you is, it's great to see the 100% engagement from the parents, right? I think for which one of my fellow trustees mentioned that special education parents, even when I was campaigning, recently, before getting elected, the most thorough conversations I had were with special education parents, bar none, right? You had a lot of parents who talked about, tax money and extracurriculars and things like that. But the most passionate and the most thoughtful conversations were with special ed parents. And it's what led me to have my initial conversation with you a few months ago, just to learn more about this topic, because I don't know a lot about it. How do we gather feedback, I guess, from those same population that we serve to gauge kind of, let's call it satisfaction level? Is there something that we do with those 600 families, or?
So yes, there's multiple things, right? So one is that parent involvement, right? Because on the IEP, that's them saying that they felt part of the process, they felt included, they felt that we collaborated with them, because they have another box they can check in exception of and write what they didn't like about the process, what they don't agree with, anything else. So to have 100%, that means that we were able to, that's at the end of the year data. So there are times when we get with the exception of, and then we schedule another meeting and we work through that with the parents. And so that's feedback we get that allows us to work through any outstanding issues that we need to address with the families. We also, every other year, we have the California Healthy Kids Survey, which asks questions about special education students, and we get feedback that way, as well as our, Kelvin survey that we recently sent. We get feedback from parents that way. And then we also, through the continuous improvement and monitoring plan, we sent a survey out to a specific group of parents that are in that, and we get feedback from them as well.
Got it. And I know I said that was my last thing. The last thing I'll say is I do wish we take this segment and snip it or something and post it in like a library or something. I think it's very, very valuable information and be great for the community to better inform themselves.
If I can add, though, to one thing is, saying that you're part of a process and giving someone an opportunity to say what they didn't like and work it out with staff is one-to-one. That's the best feedback you can get. I get to sit in a room and tell you what I liked and what I didn't like, and we got to work it out. But it doesn't mean that everybody gets what they want.
Correct.
And a lot of the complaints we get are people who love their kids and want everything for them. And sometimes there's going to be a point where the district has to say no, either for financial reasons or unrealistic asks, or we notice with the East Bay folks that move in here that maybe in the East Bay they have more money, but there's some services that are provided that are beyond the pale at times. And so Travis and the teams out there, the site administrators, have to also manage people and tell them no. And that doesn't mean their kids isn't cared for or well taken care of, or that they didn't get to be part of a process, but they don't always get what they want. And typically with SPED, because it's a very passionate part of all school communities, that's where most of the discontent comes from.
That's very, very fair point. I would simply point out that our progression of students being successful in our program speaks volumes, right? And so even if there are parents who, want a lot of services and maybe potentially it could be unnecessary, it could be difference of opinion between specialists and so forth. But I think on the whole, it seems like, based on the data, that we seem to be doing a pretty good job comparatively to anything. So I commend the staff. I know those conversations that parents probably have with your team are probably very contentious. They're probably very passionate. Way back when I was in middle school, my volunteering was with special education students during lunch hours. And if you think you need to have patience to be a teacher, it's 10x, if not more, to have to work with special education students. And that was for me a very humbling moment in just my youth. And I just commend you and your staff and all the teachers that work with our students who need the most comparatively because they're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Can I just add one more thing? I just want to say, because Dr. Nicholas, you said this, and I think it speaks volumes about our district, is that our principals on down really do implement, it's called multi-tier systems of support, so that when a student seems to be struggling with something, they have a team, it's called what, school success team? No, is that what it is? School success team that meet together and they see how they can help a student without restricting that student too much. And it's a very empowering thing in our district that we do for our students, because the more you're in a classroom away from students, the more restrictive and the bigger the gap can grow. And so I'm just really grateful that our district does that for our students with special education services, but also that they just really do use the data to drive their decisions. They don't guess. They don't say, well, it feels like we should do this. They say, this is what the student has showed us through observation, through data. And I know that, in previous conversations with you and just Dr. Nicholas, that you're very, very, focused on using accurate data to support our students. And I think that speaks volumes to what we can offer to our students by making very informed decisions. And so I just wanted to end by saying I appreciate that. I'm glad that that our community gets that level of care.
If I can, could I ask a question too? So you mentioned earlier that we had the audit 2 years ago, and there were some things that we changed. And I was just kind of curious, what have been the main factors that we've focused on from those 2 years ago to now that have helped improve it? Because we mentioned that there were some things that we wanted to change, and I was just kind of curious, what were the things that we focused on?
So what we changed is the trajectory our students follow, so that their course kind of flow outline in terms of they take Math 1 and they take Math 2, but it's in a special education parallel kind of format. And so we revamped what that looked like in that process, and just the curriculum and the training of the teachers.
Thank you.
And then there's one little anomaly that we were talking about today. So Thor and Travis and I'm Deputy Superintendent and Director, and I, sorry. So if I exit special ed to the general ed classroom, right, so I'll just leave it. The group of kids that were 2 years below and they leave, or the speech kids that go back, you don't get a bonus point on your CAS score to your SPED kids, because those kids no longer count on your SPED score, and those are your highest performing SPED kids. But those kids will typically exit into what we'll call the yellow category, is just below grade level. So they don't really give you a bump when in their first year when they arrive in the general population for CAPS. So oddly, you do a really good job and exit a kid, but it doesn't show up in the score. And so what I said in the first year, it's going to take us a couple of years to move those kids up. So we're tracking that, but it's an anomaly in a system where the state only rewards those who are there and not those who aren't there. So I just wanted to, we had a nice conversation about that today.
I do think the whole special ed department, starting with Director Manley, and all the support that our teachers receive, all the support that our administrators receive, all the support that the district office, professional development we get, really shows in the data that we're seeing. I mean, we are far and above doing very well compared to the state. And again, and I appreciate that it's a challenging environment, it's a challenging task, but kudos to everybody. And thank you so much. This is a fabulous presentation, very thorough, and really, I think, helped me get a better picture of how we provide for our special ed kids. So thank you to you and your staff. Great job.
And Trustee Modi did, he was making a recommendation about maybe putting it in a vignette, and I didn't know what the rest of the board thought about that. I think that would be a great idea personally. Like
A small clip.
I know what a vignette is. Oh, no. So,
A portion of the
okay,
meeting.
I'm sorry. A vignette, I was seeing, like, we're doing a play action scene
This is what happens with an English teacher.
We can clip this presentation and make it available. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. And I apologize for confusing you.
And thank you for the time that you took to put this whole thing together. This was great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are on item 9, district administrative reports. We're going to go to district maintenance and operations report, and I see Director Dixon.
Good evening. Currently, we are cleaning around various maintenance projects and summer programs that are going on at the sites, but the summer cleaning is in progress and it's coming along well. We should be done by the time school starts. Book orders are coming in daily to the warehouse. They are being filled and delivered to sites as well. Summer civic permit session is ending July 30th. The schools are now currently putting in their fall requests now, and tentative dates for public to sign up will begin around August 5th. Classroom furniture moves are almost done, and new TK furniture will be in towards the end of the month. As soon as it comes in, we'll have that put in the classrooms, and they'll be ready for school to start as well. In the maintenance side, the pool's been pretty good since the last board meeting. The chlorine pump was leaking, but that's been repaired. There's no issues with chemicals, the pH, or the temperature at the moment. Some of the athletic fields are starting to show signs of distress from the heat. They are watering 7 days a week, and some of the fields are even being watered extra manually during the week as well. Currently, there's a few HVAC issues that are trying to get repaired before staff comes back and school starts, and we currently have 2 positions open for high school custodial.
Thank you. Item 10, action items. Item A, consider approval to hire employees on the basis of a provisional internship permit. Sophia Benson, multiple subject credential, self-contained classroom teacher for Wickland Elementary School. Michelle LaFleur, multiple subject credential, self-contained classroom teacher for Cuesta Elementary School. And Aurora Suhey, education specialist credential, special education teacher for Cuesta Elementary School. Staff report, please.
Yes, every year we hire a number of PIPs. This is helping us staff for the school year.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
Move to approve to hire employees on a basis of a provisional intern permit.
Second.
Based on a motion by trustee Pombo and a second by trustee Modi, student preferential vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with 4 ayes, no noes, and 1 absent. Item B, consider approval of contract with Pioneer Healthcare Services, LLC for the 2025-26 school year. Total cost $242,040 for an occupational therapist and an occupational therapist assistant. Staff report, please.
Yes, what I'll say generally is action items B through H are all special ed expenditures. Director Manley can answer the details of these, but these are positions that we need. Outside agency is the means to provide them, and we recommend support, the board approval for the OT and OTA.
Any questions or comments from the board?
I'll move to approve of a contract with Pioneer Healthcare Services LLC for the 2025-2026 school year. Total cost $242,040 for an occupational therapist and an occupational therapist assistant.
Second.
Based on a motion by trustee Olson and a second by trustee Modi, student preferential vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with 4 ayes, no noes, and 1 absent. Item C, consider approval of contracts with non-public agencies for registered behavior technicians for the 2025-2026 school year. Total cost $442,290 for Aqua Healthcare Services LLC, Behavior and Educational Consulting Incorporated for 4 contracts, and New Direction Solution LLC. Do you want me to just not skip the staff report?
The
or-
answer is basically going to
Okay,
be very similar,
okay.
but if there are any specific questions,
Okay.
we certainly can answer them.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Are there any on here that are not related to, we can't hire? Like, I love the discussion around just, is it strategic to do some of this as contract work versus, hey, we want to hire internally, or just overall?
Yeah,
We
I'll
don't
let
need to get into
directly
each
mainly
one.
get into
Sure.
the nuts and bolts, but the bottom line is it's hard to find people. These outside agencies can often pay better, so it's easier to go to them. Sometimes you have a service that you only need for a temporary period of time, so having an internal candidate doesn't make sense. So it's a myriad of things, but
Yeah, 100% what Dr. Nicholas has said. Most of what you'll see on here are positions that are hard to staff, whether that be occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech and language. They've all moved to a contract base, whether it be because it pays a little bit more than a school-based does when you factor in they don't take benefits and everything else with the contractors. The RBTs are because students might not need the RBT support for their entire IEP. And so if we hire a staff member, then we have to find another position for them. So we contract for that, not knowing if it's going to be for an extended period of time or just a short period of time for that student.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, and I'll take a motion.
I move to approve the contracts with non-public agencies for registered behavioral technicians for the 2025-2026 school year. Total cost of $442,290, consisting of Aqua Healthcare Services LLC for $66,960, Behavioral and Educational Consulting Incorporated, 4 individual contracts totaling $298,650, New Direction Solution LLC, $76,680.
Second.
Based on a motion by trustee Modi and a second by trustee Olson, student preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with 4 ayes, no noes, and 1 absent. Item D, consider approval of contracts with non-public agencies for speech-language pathologists for the 2025-2026 school year. Total cost $650,016. Sorry. For Aya Healthcare Incorporated, Ascend Rehab Services Incorporated, Pristine Rehab Care LLC, and Speech Pathology Assessment and Intervention Services. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
I'll move to approve of contracts with non-public agencies for speech-language pathologists for the 2025-2026 school year. Total cost $650,016 for Aya Healthcare Incorporated, Ascend Rehab Services, Pristine Rehab Care LLC, and Speech Pathology Assessment and Intervention Services.
Second.
Based on a motion by trustee Olson and a second by trustee Pombo, student preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with 4 ayes, no noes, and 1 absent. Item E, consider approval of a contract with Ascend Rehab Services Incorporated for a speech-language pathologist assistant for the 2025-2026 school year. Total cost $120,048. Any questions or comments from the board?
Move to approve a contract with Ascend Rehab Services, Inc. for speech-language pathologist assistant for the 2025-2026 school year. Total cost $120,048.
Second.
Based on a motion by trustee Pombo and a second by trustee Olson, student preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with 4 ayes, no noes, and 1 absent. Item F, consider approval of contracts with non-public agencies for American Sign Language interpreters for the 2025-2026 school year. Total cost $255,050 with Aqua Healthcare Services Incorporated and New Direction Solutions LLC. Any questions or comments from the board?
Can I ask one question? This probably applies to I'm just curious. What is the specification of non-public agencies? Is that required or, well?
So Travis can give you the details on that. So there's non-public schools, non-public agency, but it's just they're not us. Is my simple way of saying it. But I'm sure he's got special education nomenclature that'll sound smarter.
No, really, the simplest way to look at it is just they don't receive public funds, so they're not a public school. It's all privately funded, and then they go through SELPA to get certified, and then they're able to work within the SELPA and get contracted within the SELPA.
Okay, got it. And do you know, is there a clerical reason to include it in the motion, I guess, or?
The MPA part?
Yeah.
It's a specific designation. So that's so NPS, MPA, that's specifically what we call them. So it's a consistent practice, and I think that's legally required.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. That's what I was wondering. Thanks.
And I'll take a motion for item F.
I move to approve the contract with non-public agencies for American Sign Language interpreters for the 2025-2026 school year for a total cost of $255,050, consisting of Acquio Healthcare Services, Inc. for $99,180 and New Direction Solutions, LLC for $155,870.
Second.
Based on a motion by trustee Modi and a second by trustee Pombo, student preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with 4 ayes, no noes, and 1 absent. Item G, consider approval of contract with Summa Academy LLC for specialized academic instruction and other specialized services for a student for the 2025-2026 school year. Total cost $91,522.25. Any questions or comments from the board?
Move to approve a contract with Summa Academy LLC for specialized academic instruction and other specialized services for a student for the 2025-2026 school year. Total cost $91,522.25.
Second.
Based on a motion by trustee Pombo and a second by trustee Olson, student preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with 4 ayes, no noes, and 1 absent. Item H, consider approval of a contract with Well Done Incorporated for a physical therapist for the 2025-2026 school year. Total cost $93,408. Any questions or comments from the board?
Move to approve a contract with Weldom Incorporated for a physical therapist for the 2025-2026 school year at a total cost of $93,408.
Second.
Based on a motion by trustee Modi and a second by trustee Olson, student preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with 4 ayes, no noes, and 1 absent. Item I, consider approval of purchase and sale agreement for Pombo Elementary School site, an agreement for temporary right of entry during escrow. Staff report, please.
Yes, this is an exciting one for us. So one of the tasks that we're always working on is finding additional funding for school facilities. We learned of this process probably 10 years ago. We had to negotiate it with each school site. But basically how this works is there's a law that allows for a purchase sale agreement between a developer and a school district to be utilized by the district to garner additional state funds. And so this purchase sale agreement, in lieu of a dedication of property, allows us to add to our state application, which is called a 5004 application. When it goes into the state for state funding for Pombo, half of the appraised value of that school site, that property, is added to what we would get from the state. And it's a significant amount of money. And we'll be doing this process. We've already agreed and signed an agreement with the developer for all the 3 school sites north of Byron Highway. So this is the first of 3 of those. So that was long-winded, but we're excited.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
Move to approve of a purchase sale agreement for Pombo Elementary School site and agreement for temporary right of entry during escrow.
Second.
Based on a motion by trustee Pombo and a second by trustee Olson, student preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with 4 ayes, no noes, and 1 absent. Item 11, calendar. Item A, Tuesday, August 5th is the first instructional day of the 2025-2026 school year. That's exciting. And item B, Wednesday, August 6th is our next regular governing board meeting at 7 o'clock here in the district office boardroom. In a moment, we will adjourn to closed session where we will discuss Public Employee Discipline Release Complaint Government Code Section 54957, and B, conference with real property negotiators, Government Code Section 54956.8.
Move to adjourn to closed session?
Second?
Based on a motion by trustee Olson and a second by trustee Pombo, student preferential vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with 4 ayes, no noes, and 1 absent. We are now convened at 8:14 PM to close session. Thank you, everybody.